That's the
Little
government.
sound
That's
issue.
the government shutting me down. I was going to tell you
There it is, man. There it
all the
is.
secrets today.
Already,
I
already.
was going to be all Y-files today. Oh, 40 years ago, he was just traveling a road, and then he saw a light, and that light moved faster than any light could.
Oh, there we go.
I've
We
had
got
that
it.
experience.
There
Yeah.
it is.
We're good?
Okay.
Okay,
Should be
boom.
good.
We are good. All right. So they didn't hear my wonderful intro for you, Bryan.
Hmm.
But be that as it may, you are incredible. We're happy to have you here.
Yes.
How's it been? How you been?
Good. Incredibly busy.
Yeah.
But good. Busy is good, right? So yeah, everything's been really good. I mean, I've been beyond the comics thing, I've got some film things I'm putting together. So you're just doing a bunch of things at the same time. But I'm better like as a butterfly, going from like flower to flower than I am just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen, you know?
Mm.
I don't do idle time well, right? So busy is good. It's good for my mental state, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you work in industries that move notoriously slow until they don't, right? So, you
Yeah, there's
know,
a lot of hurry up and wait, I mean, there's a lot of like yeah, that is kind of a great way to describe it. Things get you wait for a while and then suddenly it's like deadlines are raining down on you and then you end up, waiting for another while. So there is this kind of feast or famine sort of cycle that goes on in entertainment, I suppose.
yeah, exactly. We have so many questions for you.
Oh dear.
Audience members sent in questions, so
Oh dear.
people were
So what
very
are we talking? We're talking we're talking the simulated world theory, or go like a Tepe, like what are we talking today? What are we
listen,
doing? What are we doing?
listen. So 5 years ago, 4 years ago, you came on this show, and
Yeah.
to this day,
Yeah.
it's one of the interviews that we still think about, we still talk about. We went deep.
Oh, okay. We're going to go deep today. Okay.
So yeah, we are ready. We are ready and waiting. But before we dive deep with Bryan
Mm,
about all of his amazing work, I
mm.
do just have a little bit of business to take care of. Of course, we are the Comics Pals. You guys already know how to find us. I want to say thank you. Huge shout out to our YouTube channel members and our patrons. This podcast is supported by you also. Special shout out to the best pals in the universe, Thunderstruck Rebecca Alejandro, the Hound of Justice Atomic Hound, Starcross Catherine Stars, and the Red Spiral. And of course, thank you to the Night Stalker Harris Zaginski, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Kefis the Incorruptible, Momentum Mike Elliott, Dan the Truth Trudeau, Joel Justice, Jalen the Sanguine Sorcerer, Marley Manistorm, Slow Flow Dameron, Amin Almighty Perez, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, Christian Uncaged Harriet, and Always Laughing. Thank you all so much. If you want a superhero nickname or villain name and a shout out on the show, join us on Patreon. Thank you to everybody that is supporting us there. Enough with the spiel. Back to Bryan. So, you recently dropped Ultimate Black Panther, which
Dropped it.
boom,
Oh, you
boom.
were the one that did that.
Just dropped it.
And this felt to me like a return because you're still doing Blade and Blade has been amazing.
Sure.
But this book is like, I feel like Marvel's anchoring this book in a lot of ways. This is one of the only Ultimates books that
Mm,
we know that we're getting.
mm.
And, it was absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't even get a physical copy. Um, how have you felt about the feedback? What's the feedback been like on Ultimate Black Panther?
Oh, well, people have been really kind about it, and I really appreciate that. Like, I to be honest, I'm so busy, I don't track performance of the books that I do, and I've been on social media even less than normally because, I'm on like multiple screenplay jobs, I'm developing a television show, I have a film that I'm intending to direct by the end of the year and trying to get that together. And so like I just don't have a lot of time, right? But I have seen coming and going, people being very supportive about the book, and I'm really grateful for that. When Marvel reached out to me about Black Panther, it was really just a couple things. It was Will Moss, the editor at Marvel, is a friend of mine. and I like working with him. Because I don't treat any entertainment company like a monolith, because it's not. You're really dealing with the people in that company you're dealing with, right? So like if you have a executive at Warner Brothers who's just a homie, then that's going to define your experience and you're going to have a pretty good experience. If you have an executive at Universal, that for some reason, maybe the producing team on that is somebody you don't really vibe with, you're going to have a bad experience. But that doesn't mean like the studio itself is one thing or another, right? So I don't really feel like I deal with Marvel. I deal with like the five people I talk to in Marvel,
Hmm.
who are like cool people. So Will, reached out to me about it, and I'll be totally honest. This is my one controversial thing I might say. Um, Sometimes I'm initially hesitant to do a black character when a black character is offered
Hmm.
because I sort of feel like I don't want to be like the black solution to pop culture, right?
Yeah.
And so if I feel like I'm getting kind of herded into that place, I feel like that's a little reductive because I'm one of those guys that's like, I think anybody should be able to write anything. I don't
Yes.
think you need to be the thing to write the thing. I think you just need to be able to tell a good story, right?
Hmm.
So, like that's kind of like my vibe because I feel like that really opens up opportunities for everybody. It's not really a political thing. I'm just thinking like we don't want to be in a world where as an artist, you're not allowed to do something because of an arbitrary reason of like genetics. Like that seems really silly, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to get more voices and we want everyone to be able to express everything all the time. So sometimes I'm initially hesitant, but then it was like the Hickman thing, and I knew Jonathan always comes from this really layered intellectual place when he's thinking about building like events and all of that, and so that was interesting, and then I before I just jumped at it, I kind of went to look at fan discourse around Black Panther because I
Hmm.
made a mistake. I've made many mistakes. But I made a mistake in comics. When I did Fallen Angels, I did not take a temperature of where the X-Men fan base was when I agreed to do that.
Hmm.
And I came in with a perspective based on kind of my experience with X-Men comic books,
Hmm.
and kind of bringing in like you're sort of thinking about it from almost like a late 90s sort of thing. And that was not where the fan base was.
Hmm.
That fan base wanted, I think, an opposite experience to what I was generating. And had I taken that temperature, I would have known like, oh, I'm not the right guy for this right now. You know. So now, before I jump into something, I try to take a fan temperature. I look at Reddit, I look at what people are talking about, try to see where the opportunities are. Are there things is there an experience that people want that they're not really getting? Can I provide that experience? Would I be interested in providing that experience? And I saw like, oh, okay, there's a lot of desire for T'Challa in kind of classical constructionist storytelling,
Hmm.
right? I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting because I'm kind of a constructionist, by nature. I'm still like a Campbell guy. I'm like a mythology guy. I'm not really a deconstructionist, right? So I was like, okay, well, then I might be able to positively contribute to this in an interesting way. So when I felt like I had the space to do it, then I was like, do it. But I didn't think about like it's part of the Ultimate line, and it's going to be the second Ultimate book after Spider-Man. It's gonna. I'm just like, bro, I got to write a story. Like so. This is the story I would tell if I was standing on a street corner with bean pies, just telling the story, or it's going to get published and like put in comic book stores. So I mean, I just got to tell the story and let it happen. So after it came out and I saw how much attention people were paying to it, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't know that before I started because then I would have been nervous. I'm glad I was ignorant to all of that. I was like, oh dear.
So can I just say that that is refreshingly honest what you said about Fallen Angels. I enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
thank
thought it
you.
was really good. But I understand what you're saying when you say that maybe the audience wasn't looking for that kind of story at that particular point in time. I actually think history will be favorable on that book.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, look, like I I look, I'm not like ashamed of the writing in the book. I think that there's interesting ideas and all of that, and it's just that when you have these ongoing popular culture universes,
Mm.
there are shifts, like cultural movement shifts within them as they go forward, right? So this is a more drastic analogy, but if you're a huge fan of, let's say, the Adam West kind of camp take on Batman,
Mm.
there's really not much for you to eat right now
Yeah.
Right.
with Batman, right? That's not where Batman is, right? And it's to me, it's. I mean, some people say, well, this is bad and this is good. Well, I work hard and everything, try to make everything good. But like, if you take like Zack Snyder's work, for instance, right? Zack works incredibly hard. I don't know him personally, but I know him through mutuals. He's an incredibly hardworking guy. And for a lot of people, that was exactly the experience they wanted. And for a lot of people, they just weren't ready to receive a DC universe, a Superman story, really, in those terms,
Right.
right? And it seems like James is doing something that's a bit more Donner-esque. At least, I mean, I don't know nothing about the project, but like just from what I've seen, it seems like there's more of like that kind of vibe going on, right? Um, and so it's a lot about when culture's ready to receive something, right? Like take like Timothy Dalton, for instance. I love Timothy Dalton as James Bond. I like License to Kill, I like Living Daylights, but when he was James Bond, they weren't ready for that. Like, let's go back to the novel version of James Bond that he had because he was coming right off of Roger Moore, and it just wasn't that time to like have that emotional verisimilitude that Dalton wanted to bring. But without Timothy Dalton, there would be no Daniel Craig,
Mm.
right? Because that exact approach that Dalton wanted to do back in, like, I think License to Kill, I mean Living Daylights was 1989. That exact approach that Dalton had to the character in 89 was exactly what they did when Casino Royale came out, right?
Wow.
Which was let's bring him down to emotional verisimilitude, right? Let's scale this stuff and make this stuff as real as we can. Let's make him dangerous again. Let's make him a guy that you're glad he's on the case, but you may not want to be his friend, right? And like taking those risks. So sometimes it's about when things hit you. But in the case of Fallen Angels, I have gotten a lot of really kind, thoughtful responses from people who just responded to some of the ideas in that book. Like the idea about destiny and purpose and regret, and those sorts of things. But there were also people that were more interested in kind of, and I don't mean this in a reductive way, but they were more interested in sort of the soap opera dynamics of what was going on with the X-Men,
Right.
Yeah.
which to me,
Yeah.
I just wasn't in that place.
Mm.
You know, like if you get a superhero book from me, you will never probably get a scene where they're just going to sit in an apartment, talking about life, like making a smoothie, for like 3 pages. Like I get it, like it makes it reflective of who we are, and it kind of brings these heroes down to our level. I totally understand the desire to experience that. That's not me. If I set up a scene like that, then like Doctor Doom's gonna crash through the window and screw that up, right? It's just not gonna like play itself out,
It sounds
just like
fun.
straight up, just like a thing. So yeah, so sometimes you're just dissonant, but I felt like with Black Panther, taking us back to the present here, um, I just felt like this is an entire narrative universe, Wakanda, right? It's one of those rare things where, you do Spider-Man when you're in New York, so you're largely in the world of Peter Parker, and then New York is New York, but a lot of New York is established, and a lot of people share New York as the base of their storytelling, right? Characters do. But like Wakanda, I've been using this allegory. It's like Dune. It's like any kind of, it's not cosmic, but it has the same lateral expanse that kind of world building does. And so I just felt like there was a lot of untapped potential there to think about the history of Wakandan culture, the esoteric aspects of Wakandan culture, and how those esoteric aspects they brush up against the pragmatic political aspects of Wakandan culture, and what are the secrets of this world, right? We've been comfortable with vibranium for so long as a concept, um, that it feels very familiar. vibranium to, I think, the reader of Marvel comics. And I'm like, but if you look at other cultures, you look at like the Aztecs, you look at Egypt, you look at the Nubian cultures, you look at the Viking cultures, like there's still persistent secrets of these cultures,
Mm.
right? Look at Rome. There's secrets of Rome. And you study Roman history. There are things about Rome that even the emperor did not know.
Hmm.
There are forces in Rome that the emperor fears because their power may be more powerful than that of the emperor. And I'm just like, well, this is interesting to me. Setting the stage for this type of thing is interesting to me. Hold on one second. So, talk about verisimilitude is about to get super real. Hey, you can just go to the front desk and they'll send you up. Thank you. Oh, I'm outside of your door. Okay, just leave it at the door. Thanks, man. You're on a podcast. Say hi to people. Okay, thank you. Okay. uh, that was my DoorDash.
Beautiful.
But yeah. So like that really interested me because I was like, oh, okay, I can explore this kind of stuff, and it being the ultimate universe, I can make some choices here.
Hmm.
That may affect the prehistory of the book, and how does that affect the present and the future of the book? And with Khonshu and Ra, now we're kind of in this esoteric place.
Yeah.
And I thought like, oh, this is cool because this is kind of spooky. You're gonna get some horror elements in my run here. That
Hell yeah.
I've got some like Lovecraftian things I'm weaving into it. Just try to take it in new places.
Yeah. How do you decide what secrets you want to apply? Like I'm sure you come in with like a thought or a few thoughts of what you want to sort of show and represent, but then the story can kind of take you elsewhere. Do you find that happens, and then in those moments, do
Yeah.
you like how do you decide actually I want to change course?
Well, you kind of have this wicker basket full of ideas, and places you want to go, and then sometimes you're like, ooh, I need a little more runway to
Mm,
get to this story point. And that's kind of what happened in the first arc. I had a certain plot plan together, and then I realized like I have to introduce and develop these characters in a way that makes them live and breathe. So I need a little more runway before my next event. You know, I need to kind of slow burn this a little bit so we can understand who is T'Challa in this universe, who is Shuri in this universe, who is Okoye in this universe, who is Killmonger in this universe, who is Aurora, Storm in this universe. Like how what because it's the ultimate thing, right? So they're going to be familiar, but they're also going to be kind of not familiar, right? So if we take like Eric and T'Challa, well, look, the obvious thing would be oh, they're going to see each other, like each other. They're going to have a fight, and he's going to try to kill T'Challa, and there we are, right? And maybe that happens that way. Maybe it doesn't happen that way. But what I don't want is I don't want people to just kind of wait for the gravity of the canon to take over, and so they feel like, oh, I know where this is going to go. It's like, well, no, it might not go that way.
yeah.
Or it might not go that way for the reasons you think. Like, and so like, yeah. So sometimes you wind up pushing things out a little bit to take more time to do things. You find opportunities to do some things. You realize like I need to focus on the villains a little bit. So this, a certain next issue was going to be about this, but instead, you know what? I need to be with the bad guys. Like sometimes you just got to live with the Harkonnens for a little while before you get back to the Atreides, right? So, or the Fremen, Muad'Dib. So like, yeah, it evolves for
Yep.
sure.
So you've done some Black Panther stuff before. You've kind of played in that space. The Killmonger mini was
Yeah, did that.
absolutely
That's right.
incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you even had the Unconquered one shot. So
That's right.
were there things that you still had to say? Because obviously, yes, these are the ultimate versions of the characters, but it's still,
Sure.
it's still them. Were there
Sure.
things you felt like you had to say that made returning to this universe with these characters tantalizing for you?
Not necessarily like things I had to say. I mean, we know with Killmonger, that was an interesting thing because I didn't understand what they wanted me to do when they first reached out to me. They were like, "Well, hey, do you want to do a Killmonger miniseries?" And I'm like, "What is that? I don't know what that is."
Why?
Yeah, kind of like, what? Why? You know,
Why?
and yeah, literally just like, why? And they were like, well, like you were fleshing out the Black Panther world and the rest of it. And I was like, well, I'm disinterested in anything after, we have the classic Killmonger versus Eric, stuff.
Hmm.
Because I feel like what I would be doing if it's canonical is I'm kind of squeezing out a miniseries in Phantom Time that doesn't really matter, right? An example would be like, did you know the secret story of how Darth Vader got to his shuttle to get down to Endor in Return of the Jedi?
Right.
Bounty hunter,
Number
Thrawn
one.
Lanal shows up to execute a contract on Lord Vader before his Endor shuttle. Like, no. You,
Right.
that's like that ridiculous transmedia where you're
Yeah.
like, that didn't happen because none of the emotional fallout of that is seen in any of the stuff going
Yeah.
forward, and that's ridiculous, right? Like
Right.
that's not it, right? So I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. But I think there's a way to outline Eric's motivations that could be more interesting. And I think there's a way to interface him with the real world a little bit and graduate him into that character of Fury that we've seen. And that would be interesting to me. And then when they let me play around with like Kingpin and like kind of taking him around to places you didn't think normally would go. Like one of the things I always thought about in comic books is it's sort of like there's this weird polemic where you have characters that have no powers, and then you have characters that have like godlike powers.
Right.
But I'm like, well, it wouldn't really be like that. Like there'd be a lot of mutants where like all they could do is like make your cell phone ring. Right? Like that'd be it. That'd be the only
Absolutely.
thing they could do, right? Like you
Microwave.
wouldn't you wouldn't necessarily get like a blue and gold outfit and get on like the
Right.
Blackbird. Like you literally could like I could make all the cell phones ring within a 50-yard radius, right?
Or you just generate endless amounts of snot from your nose,
Yeah,
like
like you would just be like kind of like kind of like a podunk X file, right?
Yeah.
So like, but I like the idea of like characters that are like they can do a thing, but like they can't like fight Doctor Doom, but they can like do a thing. And what would you do? Well, you would probably monetize that,
right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you would probably figure out a way, like I can do this one thing, and then maybe I can hook up with other people that can do like the one thing, and then we're also like, an organized crime unit, and we kind of do it that way. So, so when it comes to Black Panther, it was like, well, I did one shot with T'Challa. That was really just like a straight superhero romp, basically, of a story. I mean, I put like a little bit of stuff in there I could, but when you're doing a one shot of a character like that, in a lot of ways, you're doing a glorified version of like what you would get inside a box of cereal,
Mm.
because you have to have like a standalone story. It's not really an annual, so you don't get that much time, right? And because it has to satisfy, I think, the median expectation of experience. Like I'm not going to do a one shot with Black Panther and like do a Tom King like exploration into psychology
Right.
because like that's not the job of that kind of one shot. The job of that kind of one shot is like, oh, impulse buy. There's a Black Panther story. Let me flip through. He fights somebody. Cool. I'll pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't really like a deep visitation with the character. But yeah, you're doing something that's ongoing. You can spend more time with things, and the way that Hickman is sort of timelining these things out too, it gives you a little bit more opportunity to do some interesting narrative things. So yeah, I just felt like well, this is a an opportunity for me to actually dig in deep and pace out a story rather than give you a really cool Black Panther short punch of a thing.
Before we move on, Brian, did you want to get that DoorDash? That is
Oh no,
totally okay.
it's I think it's been handled.
Okay.
It's just there in front of the door. I'll get it later.
Okay. So, by the way, listeners, we are giving away a volume 1 of one of Bryan's books. All you have to do to enter is leave a comment, ask a
Mm,
question in the chat. We will put your name down and we will do a randomizer here at the end and decide who's going to get one of Bryan's incredible works. So we'll be doing that giveaway a little bit later. By the way, thank you to Comics Are Dope. I see you in the chat. I'm a huge fan of your channel, man. We'll get to that question for Bryan a little bit later. So, one of the things I noticed about this Ultimate Black Panther book is that if you're a person who only knows Black Panther through the movies, you're going to come into this right at home. It doesn't feel like something that would like it feels like you get dropped into a moment that feels like it could have been from that universe. And I think that that helps the viewer, the reader who is a Black Panther fan from the movies, limited exposure, but they come into this and it's like, oh, I get this. I know who these people are. I understand these dynamics and stuff, but with some twists and turns, which for me as a Black Panther fan who, I haven't felt fed in some time, this issue 1 gives me everything I want from the character, everything I like,
mm,
all the trappings that I enjoy, but it has the Bryan Hill sexiness, right? Because you always bring a certain vibe to your books. Your characters, not that you draw them, but I feel like it's either the artist that you like to hook up with, but these
mm.
characters are always sexy. They always have this vibe to them, and it's sleek and it's exciting, and then it has the supernatural, and it has the seer, right? So
Mhm.
it's got all these elements that I'm really digging right now.
Well, it's funny. Like, so one of the criticisms that I saw a little bit about my approach was, well, was the ultimate universe, and so we really wanted something to be turned upside down on its head, right? And we weren't getting that kind of thing in the same way we got it from Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I guess I felt that one, everyone in the universe is fluent in Spider-Man. And Spider-Man is essentially a monomyth of popular culture at this point. We all know the basic details, and so we will all get a reward from seeing the subversion of those details. I did not feel like Black Panther was yet at monomyth status,
Mm.
right? So a broad subversion, I don't think would have been universally rewarding to people. It just might have been really confusing in a way that was kind of frustrating, creating friction between the reader and the book. The other thing is, my personal belief is when you're starting over a new thing and you have like an ultimate universe thing, I want to make the biggest tent possible for people. So I want to do something that tells people that are longtime fans of canon, that will have that have a lot of Twitter comments to tell me about why T'Challa was not portrayed as a super genius in the first issue when he should have been, and he is a super genius. I just did not have time to do that, dear readers. Uh, but like you go through that, and I want those people to have things they can hold on to too, right? Like, okay, so it's cool. Like I see this, I see that, I respect that, it's great. But I also want like impulse readers to be able to pick it up and enjoy it. Because one of the things that troubles me is I feel like comics as a reading form, they're getting more and more insular. And I think part of that is because of price point. The price points, they used to be impulse buys. Used to be get a Slurpee, get a Snickers bar, get diabetes, and get a comic book, right? And that used to be like how you rock it. You'd get the wire rack in the 7-Eleven or what have you, and you could just snatch them up that way, go to the comic book store, snatch them up that way. Now it really does feel like you have to budget for these things,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and like that's cool, like inflation and the cost of the rest of it, but it's hard to just impulse buy a book now, right? Like that's not the easiest thing to do, right? So I feel like if someone's going to spend money on this thing because they have even an ambient interest in the character, maybe it's from the films, maybe it's from a video game thing, maybe it's who knows what it is, maybe just like the soundtrack or whatever, and you like saw whatever it is. I try to make sure that no one's going to be lost in the narrative, and then as the narrative goes, the canonical subversions, those start to germinate as I tell the story because everyone's bought into it. And so for some readers, they won't know this is a canonical subversion. But for readers that do know canon, they'll recognize it as such.
Mm.
But everyone gets kind of brought up and gotten to fluency at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been loving it. I know the audience has been loving it. I can't wait for more. I really can't. Are you able to say, is this something that is an ongoing, or is this a mini in your
Well,
mind?
it's definitely ongoing for a while. I mean, who knows? I mean, I can't say it will be published forever. Like it's an ongoing as of now, and I imagine with the reception of it, and the reception of the overall Ultimate Universe, it'll be going on for a while. I don't have a ton of time to do a lot of comics, and so I can mainly basically only do maybe two a month with my schedule. I'm very careful with the slots I choose, and I did schedule the ongoing time for this. So yeah, as long as people keep reading it, they'll keep making it. I mean, that's just how comic books work.
And speaking of reading,
Yeah,
Blade has also been, incredible. I am not This is the first time that I'm picking up a Blade book.
sure.
My only familiarity or care for the character was just like the Wesley Snipes version from the film.
Yeah.
And so coming in, I only bought the book because of your name being on it, and I'm glad I did because it's got Elena Casagrande, and both of you are doing incredible work. It feels like Bryan Hill, and that's one of the things that as you've put out more and more books beyond Postal, where I first found you, I have figured out your style.
Oh,
It's
okay, right
got
on.
it's this sleek, sexy horror, right? It's this protagonist who's hot, but he's got an edge. There's darkness, there's
Uh,
hot women, there's action. It's fun, but it's also deep because it's exploring, who is Blade? You
well,
know,
yeah, it's look, and again, I'm not by talking about the things that motivate me, I'm not besmirching people that come at things from the opposite direction, right? Like I want, you know, the chorus of voices and a wide diversity of thought and creation in popular culture. But, you know, I grew up basically wanting to see people that looked cooler than me doing things that were cooler than I could do for emotional reasons I could understand.
Mm. Mm.
Right? Like that's because I was a kid in Missouri, growing up in a single parent home. We had the one good TV, and you got like a TV like your bedroom, but you had the good TV. So you have the good TV in
Yeah.
like the family room, and then there was a big yellow pillow that I would sit on and I would watch stuff. And so I always call my work like big pillow stories, right? Where you sit in that
huh.
pillow and you throw your movie on and you get like people that look cooler than you doing things that are cooler than you can do for emotional reasons you can understand. And I just really vibe that way. And maybe it's the Hollywood side of my career, right? But like, when I was working on Titans, that television show, as a writer producer in that for the whole stretch, I remember one time I was talking to Connor Leslie. She played Wonder Girl on the show, and she's a good friend of mine. And sometimes I was just like, you just look really cool. Like it's sometimes it's just really like you're looking at the shot, right? And you're looking at the monitor, and there's like this beautiful young woman in this cool outfit, like or a trench coat saying something cool. You're like, we're making something cool, it feels good, right? It's just dope. I remember talking to Brenton. The first time I met Brenton, he came out in the Robin suit. That was the first time I talked to him on set, and I'm like standing in front of a dude that looks like Robin, like in a Robin suit, and I'm like, this is my job. This is awesome. This is incredible. Like people have
Surreal moment.
real jobs out in the world, man, and I'm sitting here talking to Robin. Like all my choices are justified. Screw you, high school teachers. No, actually, my high school teachers were very supportive, but that just makes the joke better. So, but yeah, so like that does motivate me, and like I'll be, and maybe my second controversial opinion, I don't want to see me in the book.
Hmm.
I want to see someone who looks cooler than me in the book.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like I want to see people who look iconic.
Yeah.
I'm galvanized by that. That's exciting and cool to me, right?
Yes. Yes.
So like I want to identify with someone's motivations. I don't want to identify with like, their silhouette.
That's
Right? Like it's like when Daniel Craig gets out of the water, I'm like, well, I'm never working that hard. But that's awesome that you did, brother. Like that stuff just I think it's dope. And I think it's fun too. But yeah, at the same time, I like to make things about things too. Like, I'm pretty apolitical in my work, unless I do like American Carnage or something where I'm like all over it. But even that wasn't really like this is what Bryan Hill thinks. It was more like these are characters that have points of view, and those points of view are battling each other. And I leave it to the reader to figure out where they lie, even in a book that deals with kind of hot button political issues. But in general, I'm pretty apolitical, but I am highly ethical. So for
Mm.
me, I think ethics, a conversation around ethics is universal. And when you macrocosmic it down into the political, then I'm shutting people out one way or another, right? And although I'm pretty clearly a fairly liberal guy, right? I mean, everyone can kind of tell that. Like I'm a snowflake. I have a tattooed on my forehead, right? I'm a snowflake, NPC, whatever it's supposed to be, right? But I don't like to just reduce the story down to that kind of thing. I'd rather discuss the ethics of action, right? So, like if we're having a political discussion about the role of government in people's lives, what we're really having a discussion about is about communal responsibility to one another
Mm.
and about individualism versus collectivism on an ethical level. How responsible am I for my brother? And how responsible is my brother for their own choices, right? And so that's an ethical discussion. That you can engage with Blade having killed the wrong guy and now he's responsible to kind of like fixing it, or instead of instead of like highlighting patriarchy in a scene where you say patriarchy, 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 instead it's like why don't you just present a female character who has agency
Right.
in the world and you can see how she moves and you can see it demonstrated dramatically,
right.
right? Without putting you in school
Yeah.
Yes.
about the 101. You know what I mean? Because then you wind up choir preaching. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and again, I'm not subverting anyone's point of view, and I do carry a lot of progressive points of view. But I also know that people don't like being preached to. So like one of the things that I always say is, you know, one of the movies that I think did the most to move forward, uh, not race relations, but I think to break some of the racial stereotypes that we had in America was Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Mm.
And Lethal Weapon did that because it did not put you in school. It just presented you a middle class black family that loved each other, where the people were good and they were open and they were accepting, and you just took it.
Mm.
And there were people that may not have thought about Black Americans in that way that watched Lethal Weapon, and somewhere subconsciously, a door of possibility was opened in them,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, racists aren't going to watch movies about racism in general. An anti-Semite is not going to watch Schindler's List, right? So, like, a chauvinist is not going to watch something that says this is taking on the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
But a chauvinist might watch The Terminator and think differently about what women can do.
Yes. Yep.
So I like to I like to tell stories. I'm an entertainer ultimately. People work 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week for somebody they don't like doing something they never wanted to do. They get a little bit of disposable capital, not much, getting smaller every day, and they go to a comic book store and they're going to spend that little bit of money they have on their favorite hobby. My job is to make sure that whatever money you spend on that book is worth whatever else you could have spent with that money.
Yeah. Yeah. That value.
You know what I mean? Like, just real talk, like a comic book is a sandwich. I say it a lot, but it's true.
Yeah.
Right? That's a sandwich. You can eat off that,
That's a coffee
you know?
and a bagel.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you can eat off that.
Damn.
So and there are people in there who don't get that sandwich from that place because they want to get that issue with Superman.
Mm.
They want to get that issue with Spider-Man, you know. they got their kids in there, and they got a couple kids, and so they're splitting up that $50 they have set aside for $60, whatever it is between all these different things. And so it's my job to make sure that you're getting the most value I can provide from a book. And while I might have certain points of view, I have philosophical points of view, I have ethical points of view, and I do have political points of view. Um, I feel like I am best as a storyteller when I can discuss those things at a macrocosmic level that doesn't make everyone tribe up.
And you can have the thing not be talked at, but rather engage in a conversation. Because I think that's where to your earlier point on not wanting to just focus on the political. You want to have the ethical conversation because that's a conversation. There's nuance involved that you have to navigate around.
Well, it is. It's just what I'm best at.
Mm, mm.
Like in a world where Ta-Nehisi Coates exists, he don't need my help. That man has that on lock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not on some Capcom fighter like, double tap. Bryan comes in. Like, no,
Right.
he's good. He's good. He get like a Pulitzer Prize or something like that. Like he good. He good. So like, when I see people that are so skilled at that and so good at that, I'm like, well, what I'm good at is making big tent stories that hopefully are about a little more than someone would expect and get people to consider not just like the sociological issues we have, but the philosophical issues we have too. Like the higher ideas, like consciousness. One of the things I'm fascinated with is we don't understand what consciousness is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the basic thing that makes us people. But we don't know what consciousness is. And if someone has a fully mechanistic view of humanity, but they can't tell me in what part of the petri dish consciousness is, then there's a thing there, right? Look, it's the government, it's the helicopter. I'm talking about consciousness.
Sorry, say too much.
I'm talking about the consciousness. It's the helicopter. No, it's just my key light here. It's the sun. The sun is passing. That's the black helicopter. They're coming to get me. But yeah. So like that's something I think about way more than I think about Mitch McConnell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I think about like. Gosh, like I went down a rabbit hole of theoretical physics the other day, and was just like I spent 3 hours just kind of thinking about how subatomic particles are affected by observation.
Yeah, and have you gotten to the point of wave function and like the
like wave functions and the collapse? And I'm just like,
that's
what?
season 3, Sean. You're not there yet.
Yeah, and like so I'm like this is interesting to me, right? The idea that a lot of because every generation has these presuppositions that they've built their foundational understanding of possibility upon, right? And they've all been wrong. Whether you go all the way back to the idea of an Earth-centric universe, that was wrong, right? Or even smaller things, just like the proliferation of cigarettes in society before people knew how bad they were for you. You had ads with like, "This is your doctor's favorite cigarette. Try Camel." And then and so there's this normalization of things that may be fundamentally wrong, right? And so those kinds of things fascinate me. And taking it back to Black Panther, it's like, there's the opportunity within Wakanda to discover something that fundamentally alters our understanding of things. And one of the interesting things about the Ultimate Universe is, I think Marvel, the main universe, 616, all that stuff, because we've been in it for so long that I think we've gotten so familiar with these metaphysical questions, right? Because we're so used to multiple dimensions and multiverses, and this character can go to hell, and this thing's a demon, and this thing's a ghost, and this character's brought back from the dead, that we never really stop and think about like the actual philosophical implications of this. And like some days I just think about if they find a spoon on Mars, everything changes. So in order for our world to remain in the paradigms we have, there can be absolutely nothing created by intelligence on Mars. That entire planet has to be absolutely devoid of anything created by an intelligence. We don't need a spaceship. We don't even need a face. We need a spoon.
Mm.
If they find a spoon on that planet, we have to really think about, what we believe history is,
Mm.
right? Um, and it's in the Marvel universe. There's so many things that are just like, well, this presents a metaphysical, like, big culture shift, but we never think about it in those terms, because we're moving so fast. And there's so many events, and so working with Wakanda and the Ultimate Universe and all that stuff, I can sort of like say, hey, let's think about the implications of the existence of this, and what does this happen if Khonshu finds it? What does this happen if T'Challa discovers it? What if T'Challa discovers something about Wakanda that he didn't understand before, and that changes the idea of what Wakanda is,
Mm.
right? How it came to be, um, who it may owe for its existence,
Mm.
and what those people may want from it at some point,
Okay.
Ooh.
right? Like, so these are things that, yeah. So like that's way more interesting to me than like, complaining about Jordan Peterson.
See, the thing is,
Well, and you shouldn't complain about me because it's really important. It's not good. It's not good.
but people can't regular everyday people who have that 9 to 5 where they're barely making any money, it's smaller and smaller every day,
Yeah.
like you said. At the front of their mind is that politician who they feel is making their life hell.
Sure.
It's, whatever the grind, whatever the problem is, they don't have the space to focus on the kinds of things that you are talking about. And so what happens is, you get home from the 9 to 5 that sucked,
Mm-hmm.
and you pick up Ultimate Black Panther, and it gives you the ability to do two things, at least to me. It
Mm-hmm.
gives you the ability to be entertained, to get away from the problems that you're immediately facing. But
Mm-hmm.
it also, if you are able to allow it, it gives you the opportunity to think about things that aren't even in your life, or are in your life but are in the shadows of your life. The bigger picture stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
what you were talking about. Your books can often be a window into that shadow world that plays out. I felt that majorly with American Carnage. Those things are not things that everyday average people who are in that grind are thinking about. It's just not in their face. Your
Mm-hmm.
books put it in their face, but not in a way that's like, hey, if you don't agree with my message right here, you're a piece of shit. It's like, hey, here's a scenario. Here are characters dealing with a thing. Here's a parable.
Mm.
Figure it out.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, that America, when Vertigo reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we're doing this. We're doing a line of books, and we kind of want them to be a little hot button. And they're all, like you can be a little safety off." And I was like, okay, well, let me think about that. This is when Andy Curry is changing my key here. That's when Andy Curry, reached out to me. He's a good friend of mine, and I was like, all right, but like when you mean hot button, do you mean safe hot button, or do you mean hot button hot button? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, safe hot button is me telling a story about vile people, calling them vile, and everyone generally agrees these people are vile. And there's a political bend to it. That's safe hot button. True hot button is I'm going to get people to care about a racist,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Okay.
Like that's what I want to do, right? Because there's this political phrase like only Nixon could go to China.
Hmm.
Because Nixon was so staunchly anti-communist that when we wanted to open up relations with China, only Richard Nixon could go to China because only they would believe that he would be able to do that and not be sympathetic to the cause.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm.
And I felt like as a Black American,
Huh.
I could approach this world of like looking at the various levels of like white supremacy and how it may function politically and all of that, but I can approach it in a more dimensional way because no one's going to think I believe what they believe,
Right.
right? And for me, it's all about human nature. So I talked to a bunch of skinheads. I talked to not a bunch, but like I talked to a few, and I talked to people in these movements. And some of the conversations weren't particularly useful, but some of them kind of were. And once they realized that I wasn't going to get triggered, it's like nearly impossible to trigger me. You know, like, you can call me whatever word you want. Unless you're Doctor Strange, it's not going to affect me. So, unless you're literally casting a spell, right? And you
The
can call me
Tana.
whatever you
Yeah,
want. It doesn't
yeah.
change who I am. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, so they would, yeah, they get done with all their fun words, and I'm like, well, can we have a conversation now? And they'd be like, well, okay.
Right.
But one thing I recognized is one, it was a general sense of powerless against an undefined they,
Mm.
which feels like okay, so we all kind of feel that in some measure. Two, we always discuss the opposition to our political point of view, whatever it is, as if it's a cohesive monolith. And it never is. There's still like Game of Thrones infighting in whatever broad kind of group. And what I saw was, oh, the skinheads don't like the Klan, and the Klan doesn't like the Aryan Brotherhood. And then you have the mainstreamers that don't like the skinheads or the Klan or the Aryan Brotherhood. So I'm like, oh, this is just like racist Game of Thrones. All right, well, this is kind of interesting, to like kind of throw it in there. Yeah, so I just felt like there was and then ultimately I wanted to do like a cool undercover crime thriller Michael Mann thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I just felt like I could throw that in there too. But yeah, I think readers are really smart. I think everyone who is listening to this or watching this, wherever you're broadcasting it, I think you're all really smart. And I think you all can make up your own mind about how you feel on things. I think you can take challenging ideas and challenging characters and challenging narrative moments. I don't think you need creators to hold your hand and protect you. I think you can handle it, right? Folks are smart. So I'm like, instead of just doing something that's just like, oh, this is the ball rolling downhill. We all know where this is going to go. Let's do something more interesting. People can take it.
Well, our listeners are incredibly smart. We all know that. But what do you say to people who are on the side of, I don't even care whether I'm smart or not. I want cereal in my entertainment. I want popcorn. I don't want the kind of book that's going to make me think about any of that shit.
Well, I try to make it operate on levels, right? So I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. And one of the things that you learn about Shakespeare when you study Shakespeare is that Shakespeare had to create his works. If you believe that Shakespeare did it or was a consortium of other writers, all that, we can we can get into that later. But for the purposes of this conversation, let's say Shakespeare is a guy.
Yeah.
Well, the audience for the play were people that sometimes just wanted the sword fights and the sexy.
Okay.
And then there were also people that wanted all of the philosophy and the vagaries of characters and the subtleties and the rest of it. So you're playing for like everybody. And I try to make sure that all of my books has something for everybody, right? There's stimulus there. If you just want to take it on an entertainment level, then you can just take it on an entertainment level. Because Blade's going to kill some shit. And it's going to be cool. He's going to say something cool. And he's going to sort up some stuff. Black Panther's going to do some cool stuff. So like, yeah, I just try to make sure that everyone has all those experiences are met, by the work, and then people, can engage it however they want to kind of engage it, I suppose. Now, with something like American Carnage, like you look at the cover, you read the back, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So you're probably not going to get a Ferrari chase in this one. But I kind of told you that from the beginning, So I just try to make sure that all the books that I do that satisfy the promise of the poster.
It's in the contract.
Yeah, like you see, it's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna fight somebody, it's gonna be cool. You might talk about some things, might be a little scary.
Let's give the listeners their say a little bit if we can.
Power to the people.
Kale, do you want to jump on the first one, man?
Yeah. So the first question we have is from Spiral Storm. He says, my question is that his work in writing really reminds me of Christopher Priest. Is he a fan of Christopher's work? And I love Bryan's work.
Well, look, Christopher Priest is Christopher Priest. So like that's like, I mean, I can't even compare myself to Christopher Priest like in a real way, man. I mean, that dude's like a trailblazer, been doing things. I appreciate that though. Thank you very much. I think that Christopher's work was a big influence on me, for sure. I always found his work to be kind of cinematic, in the way that he told stories. And there was a little bit, because he was kind of intense about character before that really became the thing. Like you can sort of like he was pre-Bendis intense about character, right?
Mm.
And you can sort of look at like the Bendis era is it's almost a little bit like film. Like you think about the 50s, pre-50s film, you got a lot of acting like this, see? So what are you doing there, huh?
Mm.
You
Right.
know, and it was a lot of caricature, right? And then like the method guys came in, like your James Deans and your Brandos,
Hmm.
and they were just doing different things dramatically. Like you look at like Rebel Without a Cause, it's clear that like no one else in that movie understands what James Dean is doing.
Hmm.
He's just like bringing naturalism in there, and then that gave
Yeah.
way for like Pacino and the rest of it. And now we get the kind of nuanced performances that we're sort of used to in film. But if you look at older films, you get a lot of heightened performance there. Oh, Charles Foster Kane, what do you plan to do? A lot of that. And I think in comics, mainstream comics, it was a lot like that. Priest was a guy that was doing, interesting character work before that was basically the norm. And then I think the Bendis era really set that in stone with the work that he was doing with Marvel, where that
Yeah.
verisimilitude was kind of wrought with everything that he was doing, and it spread out into comics writ large. And I think post the Bendis peak, um, you now you see books that are generally approached in that way, right?
Mm.
Like you think about Tom's work, like, and I'm a huge fan of Tom King, but thinking about Tom King's work is, I think it people can receive it because of that character shift, that characterization shift that we went through, from the Bendis era, and then you would be
Yeah.
able to receive something like, his work on Batman or Mr. Miracle or something like that in a mainstream way, because these are mainstream hits,
Right.
his books, right? Like Mr. Miracle is a pretty experimental book to be such a mainstream hit. And so I think Priest is one of the progenitors of that approach. You can look at Priest and Nocenti, you know, um,
Yeah.
there are certain people out there that I think were putting a little bit more under the hood of the psychology of these characters. And so in that way, I think I'm very influenced by Christopher for sure.
Thanks for the question, Spiral. Comics are dope, said that seemed to be the theme of Black Panther Unconquered as well. T'Challa not being a believer until he is forced to. What makes the supernatural side of Wakanda so interesting to you?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, look, the you know the when you're the leader of a nation, um, I think you need to balance the region of faith with the region of pragmatism, right? Because you are responsible for a whole nation, and I don't think you can just render that responsibility unto a faith. You have to be somewhat pragmatic. And third controversial opinion, um, whenever I see people in religious studies kind of operating as if there is a rational, logical way for them to arrive to their point of view, I'm like, but there isn't, though, right? And I don't mean this about any particular religion, but I'll just take Christianity as an example. If Christianity was rational, you wouldn't need faith, right? Because
Huh.
faith is inherently irrational.
Yeah.
I'm not saying faith is wrong, but faith is inherently irrational,
Hmm.
right? It is the holding of an irrational belief, for reasons beyond rationality and logic.
Hmm.
If logic and reason led you to a religious doctrine, then there would be no necessity for faith. So now we think about a king, and we think about a leader, and how must a leader measure belief outside of reason, logic, pragmatism, the material? Because if we as individuals believe in something and that belief turns out to be false, the fallout falls upon ourselves, perhaps our families, depending on who we are in our family, right? But if a leader does that, it falls onto the whole nation.
Hmm.
Hundreds of thousands, millions could suffer because of that. I mean, how many times in history have we seen people led into destruction because a leader had a belief,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I think T'Challa is thinking about that kind of idea about him being his intelligence level and the rest of it. To me, genius level intelligence isn't simply like, well, I can, walk up to this chalkboard and figure out this equation. I can invent this machine. It's also, I can hold contradictory ideas in my head simultaneously,
Yeah.
which is difficult for people to do, right? Like that's one of the most difficult things to do is to hold two contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously and be equally invested into each. So
Hmm.
we see a character that understands the necessity of the Vodukhan in that story, but also understands the danger of giving them so much space in the esoteric, right? It's like if you're if you're the prime minister of Italy, I believe it's prime minister. So if you're the prime minister of Italy, how comfortable are you with the Vatican being so sovereign,
Mm.
Mm.
right? So like people can't go to the Vatican archives.
Yeah.
Does that mean the prime minister of Italy can't go to the Vatican archives? Probably. How comfortable are you with that? Of just trusting that they're doing it right.
Yeah.
They're doing it right, right? When you have someone that has so much power and money and political influence that you cannot directly affect. And so these are the things that T'Challa has to consider, you know. And so he is appreciative of the way that the Vodou Khan preserve these aspects of the history of Wakanda, but he also knows that they are a temple of secrets. And those secrets might not always serve the most ethical needs. And that's the other danger in dogmatic belief systems. The danger in faith is suddenly you can justify a whole lot, you know. And so those are see, and that's why I think Black Panther is really interesting because in addition to him like making cool vehicles and like fighting people and looking dope and the rest of it, you can also discuss these kind of things at this level. Uh, and that's really interesting to me as a writer, and I think allows me to do things that readers will find pretty cool.
Do you think, because this is something that I personally feel, and maybe it's, not rational as we're saying, do you think that being a black person makes you, or is a part of why it's easier for you to hold contradictory realities in your mind at once?
Hmm.
Because I have found that I've been put in that position socially, culturally, many, many times in my life.
Hmm. Well, perhaps, right? I do think that like when you are, and this is for anyone, when you are in a society that you sort of have an innate understanding based on the precedent of history that that society was never really made for you to participate within it.
Mm-hmm.
It may allow your participation and it allows your success, but it was never made for you to succeed, right? So when you're in a country and you realize that the people that founded the country never founded the country so that someone like me or you would succeed within it. Even if they were open to the possibility of that happening one day, that was never the intention, right? And so I think that kind of constant dissonance um, does create the fertile ground for challenging thought, to explore interesting contradictions. Because when you know that you're never really at home in the status quo,
Hmm.
then it's hard for you to completely align with the status quo or dedicate yourself to protecting the status quo,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because and it's not even a matter of bravery, it's just kind of the lack of possibility, you know. Um, or put more simply, if you know you will likely always be different, you're probably more prone to exploring different things
Yeah.
because you even if you didn't, you would still be different, right? Even if you did everything T crossed, I dotted, there would still be some difference there. So you're never in a place where you feel like, well, I'm sacrificing X for Y. It's like, well, I don't really get X. I'm probably only going to get 80% X no matter
If
what
that.
I do. So Y doesn't feel as threatening. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it totally does.
Okay,
It totally does. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kill.
You ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Mike Elliott. I'd love to hear about the collaboration process with the artist on any of your books, but specifically Blade. Caught up this week and it's fire.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, so by now the people at Marvel know like how I vibe, and they know I like artists that are a little slick, that look cool, the rest of it. So they tend to bring these artists to me, and generally I just check in and ask an artist like, what do you hate drawing?
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing for me to know.
Yeah.
Because I'm a writer, I got a million ways to get there, right?
Yep.
And so if you hate drawing crowds, all right, well, I'm not going to give you a crowd scene, or I'm going to give you a rare crowd scene. So the first thing I want to know is like, what do you hate doing? It's like working with an actor, right? First question I have for an actor is, how do you like to work? Because sometimes an actor will be like, oh, I like to rehearse until I have it, then we go. Some actors are like, I don't really like to rehearse because I want to kind of keep it and just shoot it and have it, right? And so, as a filmmaker or a film producer or whatever you're doing when you're working with collaborators, I think you want to know how people like to work. And it's easier for me to change what I do than for them to change what they do, right? So once I figured out, what she wanted to avoid, and I'm not going to say it because then people are going to look for the avoidance of it. But once I figured that out, then yeah, then I just kind of write the stories. My scripts are very open. And I think maybe that's a screenwriting background of putting a lot of white on the page.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm not very dictatorial about this and angle and the rest of it. I mean, I may indicate angle or something, but really just so people can see what I'm trying to do sequentially.
Hmm.
But outside of that, I like an artist who is a visual storyteller and not just an illustrator.
Right.
Because I'm going to give you the space to tell the story visually. But if you need me to dictate every microcosmic choice of angle, distance to subject, what's going on in the background, I don't really feel like I'm writing a comic book. I feel like I'm prompting Midjourney,
Right.
and I would rather work with people who are invested into the act of telling a story, right? And so, Elena's great about that. So once we get into the flow of it, after the initial conversation, sketches come in, you see the first layouts. Yeah, you're just rocking with it, and then I'm building off of what they're doing and getting excited about some of the things I've seen them execute. That changes the way I want to approach a thing. Like, oh, I really like it when she does that. Oh, I like it when she does the way she draws this character is really hot. So like, I'm gonna make this character show up more. Like you're always kind of you're finding things. You're just like directing. Like you do it. You got a take that's in your head. You see them do the take. They did something really interesting there. You know what? Let's break this blocking apart. I want you to play this whole thing from over there. I really liked what you did there, and I want you to fight to get closer to her. And let's see what happens. You
And
know.
how do you think about the progression of time then between like coming from a like filming where time is continues within a scene, whereas you have
Mhm.
to you have to break up those scenes into moments in comics, like the heightened moments that you need to represent.
Very good question. So I think about that a bit like a graph, right? So if you can think of like rising and falling action and drama as, almost like a EKG, sort of
Right.
graph, right? Well, with comics, you're going to take that horizon line and you're going to raise it up. And so you're basically just doing the story at the peaks.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Huh.
And so like that's sort of how I look at it, right? Like I've got to kind of tell these stories sort of at the peaks. And it could be like the peak of triumph, the peak of failure, what have you, but I don't have a lot of space, right? So I deal with savage economy within a comic book. And so you're like looking at this, and then you're saying, okay, well, the rate is here, I'm just going to do that.
Sure. Yeah. Cool.
That's a fascinating answer. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, Trap God Thanos
Not
asks,
good.
is there much connectivity and communication between the Ultimate Universe writers, or do you guys just do your own thing?
There's some. I mean, I do read the scripts that are being generated for the books, and so most of what I do is just read those, and I'm aware through that. I mean, Jonathan is a friend of mine, so I can always reach out to him and ask him a question or something like that. But I think for me, because I'm a little bit siloed, with just the geography of where I'm telling the story, that I don't have to be as reactive to things that are going on, as others. But yeah, but we certainly have bridges of communication for sure.
Marco, you want to grab one?
I can't see them.
Oh, go ahead, Kale.
Okay. Uh, and I think it's Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Question for Bryan. How
Hmm.
has your work as a peer counselor affected your work?
I mean, a lot, yeah, it's something that I do on occasion, and I do it through organizations sometimes, or sometimes I'll just go to schools where friends of mine are teaching. I didn't have like a horrible childhood by any means, but I did have a difficult adolescence. My father died when I was a kid, and it took me a long time to kind of reconcile with that in a real way. And I was also a scholarship kid to a very good school, but a school where everyone had a lot more money than I did, and had a lot of shame. And so like again, like people had much worse childhoods than me. I'm not woe is me here, but I did have some struggles. Some of it's self-imposed, as we all do when we're young, and all that. And I felt isolated a lot. Like I felt very disconnected from people who had similar ambitions, points of view, things they wanted to do. So one of the things I always said to myself is if I got into a position where I was worth listening to, where people thought listening to me was valuable, I would try to be a person that I didn't have,
Mm.
you
Hmm.
know. And so like that's really kind of where it started. And it always helps to stay connected to the experiences of people who are going through the median American experience, because I am no longer going through that, right? Like I don't go to work. I work, but I don't go to work. And I there are a lot of things that I'm just vicissitudes of American life that I just don't go through anymore. And I'm grateful for it, knock on wood. But I like to understand what people are going through, and with young people especially, because it's so hard to be a young person now. I feel like it is way harder to be an adolescent now than it was when I was like 16.
Mm.
Like, I mean, look, we all have our self-perceptions about how popular we are or what we're able to accomplish and the rest of it. But we still had some realities that kept us from like falling down a complete spiral. But now you literally could be famous at 16.
No.
That's a thing, you know? Like you could
And
literally you could go ahead, Kale,
it could happen without you even knowing it, too.
without you even knowing it, right? Like the idea that there is a real rational possibility that you could be famous at 15 years old if you just YouTubed the right way
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
TikToked the right way. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to live with that knowledge, you know, that comparison, right? Like, I'm sure we all felt that we weren't particularly popular or well liked at some point, right? And it was easy for someone to sit down with us and talk us out of that field. We generally did not have a mathematical indicator for
Yeah.
how many people followed us,
Yeah.
Right.
right? Or even think of the verbiage of that. Think about the word follow. Like that's
Yeah.
weird. I got more followers. That's
Stalkers.
weird. And that's a little dark and kind of, darkly intentional because of the people that named this stuff who studied psychology to know how to make this happen. Um, yeah, so I think it's really important to understand emotionally what young people are going through, and it informs me a lot. And then the other side of it is, as a media narrative creator, a lot of times we think that our relationship to media is the relationship to media. Like I
Mm.
remember comic books being like 50 cents. I remember going to Blockbuster Video and hoping they had a copy of RoboCop, taking it back and watching it in 2 days or keeping it an extra day and paying the $5 or whatever it was, right? Like that was my relationship to media. Movie came out in a movie theater, and if you didn't see it in a movie theater, it was going to take a year and a half before you could see it again. That was my relationship to media. My mother's relationship to media was very different. My grandmother's relationship to media was very different, but that was their relationship to media. And so now, a young person, their relationship to media is entirely different than mine was.
Mm.
And as someone creating narrative media, I need to understand the role that narrative media plays in their lives.
Mm.
Mm.
I cannot create things because of the paradigm that I went through. and
Mm.
expect that to resonate with people who don't have that same paradigm, right? So I think it's critically important to the process of an artist to understand what's going on out there. And then for me as a human being, to think that a simple conversation with someone that's able to accomplish some things that someone may want to accomplish, to think that that may buttress them, well, that's really fortifying, you know? Um, and that means a lot. So yeah, it keeps me grounded in an important way. And grounding is very important in the times we're in. So yeah.
We want to respect Brian's time, so we're only going to make space for a couple of more listener questions, and then we're going to do the giveaway of one of Brian's volume ones of, I mean, take your pick, whether that be American Carnage, whether that be Blade, whatever it is. Ultimate Black Panther is only one issue deep, so you'll be waiting forever for that. Not forever, but a few months. So we'll get through a couple more questions, and then we'll handle that giveaway. Thank you, Brian, for being
No, for
so
sure.
giving.
And
Happy to
just
be here.
don't forget that a crucial component of this is that you have to be able to contact us to get it.
Yes,
please.
yes, yes. You have to be able to reach out to us to claim your prize. So,
Mm.
Marco, you wanted to ask the next listener question.
Yeah. From Joel Justice, how do you measure success as a creator? And I wanted to tack onto that. How do you manage satisfaction as a creator?
Well, I mean, look, there's the material aspects of success, which I suppose you could say that the threshold is when you create for a living, right? That's one way you can measure success and saying, well, when the primary way in which I generate revenue for my life and lifestyle is through my creativity. And I guess that's the target that a lot of people are kind of going for, right? And so it would be remiss of me to not recognize that as just a fiscal reality. To quit your day job, right? That's basically one metric. But I think that anytime that you can express something creatively and feel like you have satisfied that part of yourself that needed to express it, I think that's success.
Hmm.
And that has its own value, and that's really the thing, like you can't predict what your material success is going to be like. None of us can. It's I don't necessarily believe in luck, but I do believe that like you have to have the metal to endure the probability.
Mm.
I mean, I've never known someone that was consistently creating good work, sharing that good work, and didn't eventually get a result that gave them an ability to do that good work in perpetuity and have that be their revenue generator. But that takes a lot of endurance. You have to sacrifice a lot of things. I mean, there was a period where my friends had better jobs, they were buying houses, they were starting families, they were doing all this stuff, and I was couch surfing, eating ramen noodles, and still working on screenplays and doing that kind of thing. And a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people just they just have other things they're interested in or other pressures or whatever it is. So I never look down on anyone for the choices they make. But yeah, I think success is really when you feel like you've created something that satisfies the part of yourself that wanted to create it. And in terms of satisfaction, I think it just varies. Like I'm grateful for all of the work that's out there of mine. I can't say I'm satisfied with any of them, but I don't think anyone would be, right? Like everyone would tinker, because even if you did the thing and released the thing, whatever it was, and at the time you were like, that's it. That's what I wanted. And even if people embraced it and said, that's great, we love that. You're gonna age.
Mm.
You're gonna read books, you're gonna meet people, you're gonna have experiences, and you're probably gonna look back at something and say, were I to do it now, I would do it differently. But I'll say this. I don't think it's always wise for the artist to chase that dissatisfaction, especially with previous work, right?
Sure.
Like sometimes that director's cut that you want to do, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't, I mean, I get it. I get it. And you would have done it differently now than you did it then. But, it's almost like do a new thing that makes those
Yeah.
different choices,
Right.
don't go back to the old thing, because sometimes the recklessness that you may have had as a creator is why it's hot,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if James O'Barr could have been in a good mood and done The Crow,
Yeah. No.
right?
Yeah.
And and I'm sure, I don't know what happened to James in his life, but let's just, hypothetically, let's say like James found like a new relationship, has a family, table breakfast in the morning and the whole thing. He might look at The Crow and be like, well, I probably would do this a little differently, do that a little differently now. But then it would like reduce the power of The Crow. That's a hypothetical. I don't know James, so I'm just kind of
Sure.
making that up. But so I do think that sometimes you got to like be dissatisfied, but ride with it,
Mm.
because people at different points in their lives, they need that thing that way, that time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they need that irresponsibly angry Eminem album.
Mm.
You know what I mean? They need that.
Mm.
And if you don't
Sure.
need that anymore, cool.
Yeah.
But like they need that right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like so that's the thing. Like I think I don't think we're ever really satisfied, but I do think it's a little dangerous to go back and like retinker and do this, and do that, and all that, because I think you can sort of separate you could separate the fiction from the people that really it spoke to them on that level the way it was. Sometimes you don't want the remaster.
Mm.
I don't want like a Beastie Boys album with a deep remaster that makes it cleaner. No, it's supposed to be dirty.
A little
Like,
grimy.
Grimy.
yeah, like Beastie Boys is supposed to be grimy, right? Let it be grimy. So yeah, but I think in general you're never satisfied as an artist. You're always looking for something else.
So what is your advice then to a person
Oh
who
dear.
I know, right? Regardless of the stage of life that they're in necessarily, who has a burning desire to create and a
Hmm.
burning desire to be, you know, successful by the measure of their work is received well by the audience it's intended for, right?
Hmm.
What do you say to that person as far as the qualities that are necessary for them to succeed? If you want to succeed doing whatever it is creatively, this is the thing that Bryan has to say to you that you need to know to advance and do your thing.
So they want the money and the cars and the clothes.
I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose. Um, gosh. I genuinely don't believe that we are given the desire to do a thing, the true desire to do a thing, and not given the ability to do it. I think that we're interested in many things. But I think that if there's really a part of you that it's just desires to do a thing, I think there's a reason for that.
Mm.
And I do think that somewhere in you is the ability to do it, right? Um, so I guess my biggest point of advice is take risks often and take them early.
Mm, mm, mm.
Like create as soon as you feel the desire to do it. And create and share, create and share, create and share. And accept that you're going to have an inner voice that's telling you that you might be wasting your time. You might have some external voices telling you that you're wasting your time. But just keep honing your craft. And if you do that consistently, and you make every day a mission to be better than you were the day before, change is constant, right? So tomorrow we're all either stronger than we were today or we're weaker. Depending on the choices we make today, that determines how strong we are on Sunday, right? Because we cannot stay the same. Change is always constant. So if you spend every day working to get better at your craft, eventually you will get to a level of mastery that will probably change your life in one way or another. It may not change your life in the way that you imagined it would, but it will change your life for the better in one way or another. So I really do think you just stick with it. And also don't think about the things you don't have. Just use the things you do have. I have something I tell my filmmaker friends. I call it the David Fincher test. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, if I gave David Fincher your cell phone and he had no money and he had 6 hours and he had to make a film with just your cell phone and no money, he would make something awesome
Mm.
because he's David Fincher. He would figure it out, right? Kubrick would figure it out, right? Cameron would figure it out. So unless you're telling me that David Fincher couldn't make something awesome with just the stuff that you have, you're just giving me an excuse. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so I tell people, use what you've got. You know, it doesn't matter if you don't, oh, well, I want to do a comic book, but I don't have an artist. Well, have you written all the issues?
Hmm.
Well, no. Well, then maybe write the miniseries and then worry about getting an artist later. Oh, I don't have enough time to write. If, like I said, so when someone says, I don't have enough time to write, it's hard to find time. I'm like, okay, when's your birthday? And someone will say, oh, my birthday was, you know, August 27th. I'm like, okay. If you had written 1 page a day from your birthday, by your next birthday, you've written 365 pages. And everyone has enough time to write 1 page a day.
That's a novel.
That's a novel, right? That's 3 screenplays and change.
Hmm.
And that's just 1 page a day from your birthday. We all have the time to write 1 page a day. We write more than 1 page of text on Facebook, on Twitter, X, whatever it is, right? So you just have to dedicate yourself to doing it and scaling creativity in a way that integrates in your life and keeps you productive. You know, but I think a lot of people, they talk themselves out of it because they just focus on the things they don't have. I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have this, I don't have that. I promise you, like 99.9% of the people listening to this, virtually all of the people listening to this, you have enough stuff right now to do something amazing. The creators that you love could take exactly what you had right now. Then they're not calling anyone, they're not spending any of their millions of dollars. They're taking your phone or your laptop, whatever it is, and just what you have, and they're going to make something dope, you know? And you know, so just get yourself in that mentality, and stick with it, because the worst thing in the world is regret. You know, if there's something that I fear regret. I fear looking back and thinking about what if I had? What if I had just? You know, and I live a life to prevent myself from ever having that feeling, because we don't know how much time we have. You know, we don't know how many tomorrows we have left. So you want to make sure that, like, every day, you know, maybe this is the Hagakure and the samurai stuff that I always read, but, like, you know, I try to make sure that every day I'm capitalizing on the fact that I exist, and I'm not living believing that I will exist tomorrow, because I may not, right? So yeah, you know, I think if you just dedicate yourself to it, and even if it doesn't like lead you to like the job or whatever, maybe it wasn't supposed to. You might write that novel, and in the process of writing that novel and sharing that novel, you're going to meet, you know, the man or woman that you were supposed to be with, and be happier in a way that you couldn't possibly imagine. And then you'll have kids, and then you won't want to be a writer anymore, and that's okay. But you didn't get there if you don't write the novel, right? The universe puts desires in us, and you can define that however you want, right? But like, the universe puts desires in us, and if we follow those desires, we are led to places I believe we are supposed to be. And we do not always know what those places eventually will be, but we will never get there if we don't follow that bliss that Campbell talked about. So
It's an incredible answer. And you know, you really, our chat right now, I know you can't see it, but our chat is enthralled by your words. And you know, thank you for spitting game and sharing your knowledge with us and with
well,
our
you know, it's
audience.
important. These are important things, you know. You know, it's not a laughing matter. It's not bloody funny. It's not bloody funny.
That voice sure is. Um, let's do the giveaway. Let's do the giveaway. I have here all of the names of the individuals who left a question or left a comment for Bryan. Even if we didn't get to your question or comment, you are still entered into the giveaway. I don't have the capacity to share it on screen right now, but you'll have to trust that we're being honest around these parts. So,
And just real quick, anyone who has a question that I wasn't able to get to today, if you follow me on Twitter, at Bryan Edward Hill, and if you ask me the question on Twitter, I will get to it at some point.
That's
Tremendous
beautiful.
follow. Even other than that, tremendous follow.
Yeah. And we have a winner. The winner of today's
Yeah.
giveaway is Mike White Robot. So,
Hey.
yes. So, Mike,
Hey,
reach out to me, reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, wherever you get us, and we will get your
Mike
book to you.
White.
Yeah. Yeah. Bryan, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. It has
Well,
been
thank
an
you for having me.
incredible conversation. You are just you have the most fascinating mind in comics to me of all, and
That's
I've
because
spoken to.
I'm clinically insane, so it's fine.
I guess I
No,
must be too because we're vibing on the same level.
I'm not. No, I know I'm not crazy. No, no, I'm not.
We didn't even get to the aliens. We didn't even get to the aliens. So that we have to have you back.
Listen, there are things to discuss.
Always
Yeah.
are.
Spoon on
Always are.
Mars.
At Bryan
Spoon
Edward Hill.
on Mars. Yes, I'm a man that is kept awake by the by the existential terror of a spoon on Mars.
He got a shirt that says no fear. Oh no, now I have to get a shirt that says one fear.
Yeah.
One fear. I have driven myself insane because I thought too long about a spoon on Mars. That's like a Neil Gaiman character.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Brian's actual background, his wall is just littered with images of a spoon
He's
on
obsessed with
Mars.
spoons, just
Any
spoons
any
and
any
Mars.
rock that could be relatively shaped by like a spoon.
He thought of that too long and his mind broke.
But
Uh,
Bryan, here's the thing that's really going to bake your noodle.
yes,
There is no spoon.
there is no spoon. They knew.
They knew all along.
I don't know what they knew, but they knew. There's a
At Bryan,
simulated spoon on Mars because we live in the simulation, and there is no Mars to even have a spoon.
it's all the Matrix.
Like and subscribe.
And that's where we
At Bryan Edward Hill on social media, go pick up Ultimate Black Panther #1 if you can find it. The reprint will be out soon. Issue 2 will be out soon as well this month. Blade is still ongoing and incredible. Bryan has other amazing books like American Carnage that are out that you can go grab that are, completed works. Bryan, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with?
Um, Look, just my deep appreciation for any of you that have like watched my stuff, bought and read my stuff, talked to me on social media. Like I would not have a career if people didn't experience my work. So I just always take these moments to be, just to show that I'm immensely grateful for all of you. And I appreciate you all. And thank you very much for your support along the way. And I've got more things coming. And you are valued.
So are you. Audience, we will be back in just a moment to say goodbye to you guys and chat a little bit. We're going to say goodbye to Bryan off mic, so we'll be back really soon.
wait 1 second.
So that was incredible.
God damn.
Brian's mind is just so like protect that man. Like we need that man's brain. We need his comic books. We need his energy. We need his philosophy. I
His
was just saying,
consciousness.
yeah, like I love speaking to people who I believe are smarter than me.
Yeah.
I love to sit under the tree and just listen. And he's one of
Mhm.
those people that like you put a microphone in front of him, ask him a couple of prompting questions, and he's just gonna go. And where he goes and what he says, like you got to soak that stuff up. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed that. I hope you were paying attention to that. I think he brought up a lot of subjects beyond just cool comic shit that are worth spending time thinking
Mm.
about. Oh, I was almost remiss. Mike White Robot gave us a $5 super chat. Thanks for the work you do finding great creators to share their wisdom with us. You are very welcome. You are very welcome.
Because of people like you that we're allowed to.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Appreciate the support so much. And look, it's fun for us, right? Like, let's not even lie. Like, I was a fan of Brian Hill's before we started the podcast because I was reading Postal.
Yeah,
back
same.
then.
That's right.
Right. So to be able to speak with him now, this being the second time that we've done that, for me, I'm a fan first. Like, yeah, I have a job to do here and everything else, and I'm focused on it. But I'm a fan just like you. If I wasn't doing this show, I'd be in the chat watching his interview if he was on some other show.
Yep.
So, go ahead, Kel.
And the last episode is one of the few episodes that I will go back and listen to. You damn straight, I'm gonna do it again. Because there was some stuff in here that I just like, what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. And the other thing I love about Brian is that I really feel like I could ask him any question. And he's gonna answer it.
He's willing to entertain.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of creators, you might have to like dance around certain things. You gotta be careful. Brian, you could ask him anything.
Yeah, dude.
Even about the X-Men book.
Oh yeah, Fallen Angels.
Yeah.
Fallen Angels, thank you. He just volunteered that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, dude, okay.
That was remarkably refreshing. And I wanted to ask a Fallen Angels question, but I was like, maybe that's a touchy subject for him. He went right into it. He wasn't afraid of it at all.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. Well, what else is it gonna be? It's like, oh, you're right.
I love it. And I did want to address something from the chat earlier. There was a conversation about, we had talked a little bit about escapism and, the way that people engage with story and the value of it in their lives. And I feel like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to engage with something and not think that deeply about it. I think that's totally cool. I got no problem with that. I think the only problem that I have is when we reduce the entertainment that we love to being able to be only that and absolutely rejecting the idea that it could be more. I personally can't turn my brain off to the things that are intriguing about, let's say, Ultimate Black Panther beyond the cool costume. I have to see it and I want to see it. And I think you'll be more enriched if you choose that. But if you don't want to, that's fine. I just, don't yuck someone else's yum in that sense. I don't think comics should not be able to do that, or Star Wars should not be able to do that. Maybe you're not looking for it, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't exist, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like I took part in bits of that, doing the thing I did on Thursday. I read all 6 issues of Cy Spurrier's Flash. Like, Marco loves this so much. And there are very few times where Marco will really go to bat for something and be wrong. He is wrong, but I did genuinely, there was a part of me that had to turn off the brain, turn off the criticism to kind of get through it. But at the same time, the stuff that Spurrier was playing with, different levels of consciousness and reality and, you know, it just like, and even the themes of the work, like once you let yourself kind of keep going in it, even if it's in a different direction, like there's so much to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying so hard not to be reductive right now, Kale.
Hey, listen, I get it. I get it.
Mike, don't forget that in order to claim your prize, you do have to be able to reach out to us. We've had a couple of people, win giveaways and not reach out. Like I don't have the ability to message you guys.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
if you can't message me, we can't give away the book. In fact, to that, last week when we interviewed Sal, we had the Gavin Guidry giveaway, the Triple G.
Oh, the Triple G.
That's right.
That person who won did not claim the prize. You got to reach out to me. So if you know you won, listen back, reach out to me, and we can get this going. Next week, though, if Gavin is okay with it, I'll reach out to him. I would still like to do the giveaway. I would still like to make sure we get that in the listeners' hands. So, maybe we'll.
Dan says he'll take it. So
There it is.
Dan gets enough, okay? Dan gets enough. Dan has as much access as anybody. Yeah, we love doing these interviews. If there are people that you want us to talk to that you think would be compelling guests, let us know. I've got people on the docket. We have irons in the fire. There are people coming on this podcast soon that you guys are going to be really really intrigued by. But if you have other guest ideas, please share them with us.
Share them with us. Share us with them.
That's right.
That's one of the biggest keys.
Because we had was it Gail Simone, and had heard of us before we'd ever approached her. Is that right?
Yeah. I think I know why. I think it's because when we interviewed Kelly Thompson.
Yeah.
I think it's because of that conversation and the way we handled that.
But even still, like, putting us in front of them to a certain degree, like that gets eyes on us and the way we conduct ourselves and the way we conduct these interviews.
Yeah.
And us doing it and sort of getting like what's the word I'm looking for? Endorsement helps.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, Mike says I'm okay with reroll. I got so much from the interview already. Are you sure? If you're sure about that, I assume you're referring to, the Bryan Hill giveaway. If you're sure about that, we can do that, but it is your prize. So if you want it, no problem getting that in your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to reroll yours. It's just
we were talking about last week's.
Yeah, someone else's.
Yeah. And again, to get your address and stuff like that, we do have to communicate. I thought we could still do a quick game.
Oh.
Yeah. Fuck it. We don't
do it live.
We're not. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna do it live. We can't spin the wheel today, so I'm just gonna pick one and we will do it. Let's do a draft. Huh? We haven't done a draft in a while. Ooh. Yeah. Let's do a fun, cozy draft. So I want to do the time displaced draft. Time displaced. And the way this is going to work is we are going to draft 4 characters for whom the principle of their character, a huge part of it, is that they are not in the time that they're supposed to be in. For example, I'm just going to give this one up. Cable, right? Cable is from the future. Adult Cable is from the future. And he is in our present, so he counts. Captain America is not time displaced because he's alive still in his current,
oh shit.
Time.
Okay.
He's culture displaced.
Right. Yeah, he's not he didn't time travel or anything like that. He's just alive for a longer time.
Okay.
Kale struggling.
I personally would have thought. Okay, so for the sake of it, I would have thought Captain America would have counted because he is time displaced because he had that gap. He was frozen, and his method of travel
Oh, just
was just
wasn't.
different.
Was just different.
I would put him in the same category as like Fry from Futurama.
I have no idea who that is.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So, dude gets cryogenically frozen in 1999 and wakes up in
3001.
yeah.
3000.
Okay, if you want to include characters who like that, then we can do that too. That's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Well, is it time travel or is it cryogenically freezing?
Well, I think
I said time
Just both.
displaced. So that's what I meant was people that are not in the time that they're supposed to be in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Which to me, Captain America is. But I don't care that much. If you want Cap in, Cap's in. That's cool with me.
I think it counts. I think it counts.
Okay. I'll get my die real quick
All right.
and we will roll.
There's massive legion here. How'd you're killing me? I can think of two.
Okay. I have my handy dandy Avengers die right here. We are going to do a draft. High roll begins the draft. I will roll first for Kale.
Okay.
Oh, that fell off. Let's do that again. That is a 7. Now for Marco, that is a 10.
Let's go.
And for myself, that is a 7.
Oh wait, so you and Kale have to reroll, no?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we'll do the roll off. I'll roll for myself. Oh, that fell off. That was going to be a bad roll. That is a 10. And for Kale, that is an 11. So the order will be Marco, myself, or Marco, Kale, and me last. And it is a snake draft. It's been a while. Hopefully you guys remember how that works. Marco, you kick us off.
Does Booster Gold count?
Yeah, right?
Oh,
Isn't
thank
he
you,
from
God.
the future?
Because he's from the future. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say Superboy.
And how many are we picking?
4.
4.
4? Oh.
Superboy from the Legion of Superheroes. So young Superman who gets taken to the future to hang out with the Legion of Superheroes.
Okay, got it. I will go with the Terminator,
Oh.
and I will go with Bishop.
This hurts. Spider-Man 2099 gets caught recently, fairly recently, in the I think it's in the Superior Spider-Man run, gets stuck in our time.
I don't know, man. This is about people who that like that's just
I'm trying to figure it out. Like that's their thing.
yes.
Shit. All right. You said Bishop. Okay, I'm gonna take Cable since that's out there, and I'm still working it out.
All right. Go ahead, Marco.
I got Trunks,
Ooh, good one.
bro, and
Good one.
And I'm struggling right now. Trunks was the first one, and I thought Booster Gold. I'm gonna get Booster Gold out there before anybody else takes it.
You know what? I'm doing a bad job of thinking about it.
And is the current Sandman series in present day?
Sandman would not count.
Damn it. Who time travel? Who the fuck time travels?
I didn't think this would be so hard.
Oh,
I
someone for the
didn't either.
Speed Force. Barry.
Wrong.
What?
Fuck. Do you know from the Speed Force time travel?
Knights of Oa says, "Hey guys, I just discovered the show and really enjoy it. And Bryan Edward Hill is the best. Hey, thanks so much. Really appreciate that. I'm glad you
that rules.
enjoy it. Make sure you guys are subscribed. By the way, if you're not, really appreciate everybody that does that. We did eclipse 2K subscribers thanks to Sal and the population last week, but we want to keep things going. So,
Mhm.
new goal 3,000.
Is it doesn't have to be from comics.
No, you picked Trunks. I picked the Terminator.
Trunks is from comics. Fine. In that
Marco.
case, actually, in that case, Marty McFly. Oh,
No.
they
Well,
travel
I
in time.
guess. All right, sure, fine, okay. He's not
Who-
time displaced, but okay.
Doesn't he get trapped in
Oh,
one?
oh. But Doc Brown is in Back to the Future 3.
Oh, there you go.
Sure. Okay.
I'm
so
giving
we're going
I'm,
Doc
I'm
Brown.
giving that to you, Marco, to work with.
Oh, no, you take it. You
Because
take
he
it
gets
because you're
stuck.
next. You're
No, I
taking
don't.
two.
I don't want it.
Okay, fine. Then I'll take it.
I gave you Marty.
Oh, fuck. I'll take it.
Kale, do you want Doc Brown?
I'm gonna do Doctor Who.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
I don't even know enough. I don't know anything about that to even call that into question. So
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's displaced, but his whole thing is time travel.
okay. Yeah, sure. I will go with Captain America. Steve Rogers, of course.
Oh, because that counts.
And interesting. I will go
Right?
with wait, this is my last pick? Damn, do I want this to be my last pick? All right, yeah. I'll go with Age of Apocalypse Nightcrawler,
Oh, what is her name? What is her name?
who comes to mainline continuity and was a part of the X-Men during forget what run that was, but he comes during the Rick Remender X-Force series.
Mm, 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 mm. Okay, you know who I want to be? Is Ninjor from Power Rangers.
Ninjor.
What?
Yo, Power Rangers Lost in Time.
Lost in Space.
Well, there was a time one too.
Was there a Lost in Time?
Nah, I don't think so.
No, there was definitely a time one.
Nah, yeah.
Time Force?
Time Force.
Time Force.
Time Force.
All right, well,
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I'll take the pink Time Force Ranger. Fuck yeah.
sure.
Pink one specifically, because she rules.
I'm trying to find the name.
Oh. What?
Oh wow, Mike, thank you so much. Mike White Robot gave away 5 Comics Pals memberships. Thank you for that. That's incredible. Congrats to Vince, Flanagan, Moonracer, who else? Eric, Blakemore, Kevin Metzger, and Taylor for winning the memberships that were given away by Mike. Thank you so much for doing that, Mike. And I hope you all enjoy being members. I want to see more pals heads in the chats from
Yeah.
those of you that are new members.
And hey, listen, I saw people were spamming Marco's face. I don't appreciate that. I want to see my face in the chat.
His ego was hurt. My last one is gonna be George Taylor from Planet of the Apes.
Was that the guy?
That's the guy. I was looking for his name. I didn't remember. His name.
Okay, George Taylor. All right. So that was probably, by the way that went, the most difficult draft we've ever done. And maybe I'll need to turn the difficulty down for that.
I don't know why. I just could not compute.
I genuinely thought that this would be easy, but I get it. So Marco had Booster Gold, Trunks, Marty McFly, and George Taylor. Kale has Superboy, Cable, Doctor Who, and the Pink Time Force Ranger. And I drafted the Terminator, Bishop, Captain America, and Age of Apocalypse Nightcrawler. So chat, let us know who you think won this edition of the draft. We haven't done a draft. This is the first draft we've done this year.
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And Hound was trying to give me a Legion member, and I had no idea about this person's origin. Mon-El from the Legion of Superheroes, trapped in the Phantom Zone and released in the 30th century.
Whoa.
I didn't know that. I thought he was just a I thought he was a Daxamite.
Mm.
Man,
Oh, and Mike Robot has said better re-roll. I'm happy to buy Brian's work.
Okay, if you're
well, listen,
sure.
listen, he's getting the money. Like we are buying it to send it to you. So
All right, so then I will re-roll. I will re-roll, Mike. Thank you so much for that, for all of your generosity today. It's really really appreciated. So here we are. I'll re-roll, and we'll see who's going to be the winner of one of Brian Edward Hill's Volume Ones, and we land on Dylan S. Dylan S. If you're still here, if you were listening later, whenever, reach out to me, reach out to us, join the Discord server, however you can get us at this point, and we will, get that prize to you. So thank you. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us. Appreciate you guys. The next time that we will be live with you is Thursday for Pals Pulse at 6 p.m. Eastern. Vote in the listener pick poll, which is up. It's been up. It goes up every single Thursday. I just want to check in real quick with the poll, see how that's going. I actually haven't looked at it recently. So right now, wow, that's a lot of votes for this point. Right now, Batman First Night is literally sweeping the competition.
yeah,
It's sweeping the competition at 57% of the vote. Weapon X, number one, Weapon X Men rather, is at 18% of the vote. Kaya, number 16, is at 12% of the vote.
Damn.
And Superman 78, number 5, by our boy Gavin Guidry, is at 13% of the vote. Now I never advocate in these for a book. I don't do that. But today I will. Because Superman 78 has been awesome. Gavin is a member of our community and a comic book creator. And I would love to review one of his work. So let's get Superman 78 up. Let's vote for Superman 78 if we can. We do Batman books all the time. We always
all
do
the
Batman.
time.
Batman First Night's probably going to be good. That's cool. Let's do something different. Let's support a member of our community. How about that?
How about that?
Yeah. Gavin says no. I say yes. I say yes.
Gavin, you don't get a choice in the matter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, all right. Patreon.com/the Comics Pals. Support us on there if you're so inclined. We appreciate everybody who does that. This podcast is supported solely by the generosity of our listeners supporting something that they enjoy. So if you're so inclined, we appreciate that. Channel members, we love and appreciate you guys. Thank you for that so much. Super chatters, shout out to Mike for the super chat earlier. You guys are the best. We have the best audience in comics podcast.
Period.
Yeah, period. Of anything. Of anything.
Anything.
Yeah. Small but mighty.
Yep.
And ever growing.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. We'll see you on Thursday. Until then, take care, guys.
See you next week.